Hi, Cara.
Hi, Vanessa.
We have a fun guest today, Dr. Robyn Silverman, who's a child and teen development specialist. She's the author of How to Talk to Kids About Anything and the host of the podcast of the same name. And
The eponymous podcast, if it was a podcast, it's eponymous to the book.
Eponymous to the book, or the book is eponymous to the podcast. We actually didn't ask her which came first. And the book came out on exactly the same day as our book. And so we were all circling the country at the same time. And we saw her smiling face all over the place. And today her smiling face is with us on This Is So Awkward, except Cara, she's going to make it not feel so awkward.
She is really wonderful in terms of navigating conversations. I mean, her book is about how to talk about anything, but she has a lot of framing around getting into conversations and a lot of empathy building and a lot of practical strategies. You might recognize them. They may sound a lot like the things that we suggest. And that's because we give a lot of the same advice. We come from a similar sort of philosophical swath. She comes at it from a slightly different angle, but I'm not going to lie, it was a little bit of having your peers in the room on this podcast, which was really nice to hear some new ways in and a lot of validation to a lot of what we have talked about. We're reading the same research. We are steeped in the same really good information, but she lands at some of her suggestions in a different way. So for those who are looking for new inroads about how to talk about everything, enjoy this podcast.
You all are in for such a treat today with Dr. Robyn Silverman, because as you will soon learn, not only is she a brilliant writer, thinker, researcher, she's also hilarious and brings her. I said to her, I was like, Robyn, were you in theater? And yes, she was. And you're going to appreciate all of her experience having been on the stage as she joins us on the podcast. And it is going to be a very lively conversation, not only because of Robyn's awesome energy, but also because we are talking about all of the awkward, uncomfortable, scary, complex topics that go into caring for kids this age. Welcome.
Yeah, we are talking about talking.
Yes,
so Robyn, welcome.
Thank you so much. I love talking about talking. I think my kids will be like, let's not talk. How about that for an option?
I know. Our kids are going to be like, you can go live with Dr. Robyn Silverman, because I'm tired of having.
I would be so excited about that. We would have to be like, it's really time for us to go to bed. Like, we've got to go to bed now. Stop talking. But yeah.
For those of you who don't know, although if you're on social media, it would be impossible for you not to know, we had our book babies on the same day, October 10th, 2023, which turned out to be a very fortuitous day for all of us, because this is where Cara is going to get uncomfortable, because I'm going to be slightly not humble. Both of our books were national bestsellers, which was pretty exciting. Which means thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people out there bought our books, read our books, and hopefully are actually using the advice. So,
see, Vanessa can talk about anything.
I can talk about anything. Even hyping up myself. Well, I'm only hyping myself up and you up, Cara, because I'm hyping Robyn up in the process.
I love being swept away and all of that. That's great.
Yes, that's how I'm going to get away with it. Okay, so in a little bit, we're going to dive into specific topics. And Robyn, we're going to get your advice, as you do in your book so beautifully, which I don't have my copy here because both copies that were coming my way. So Robyn's holding up her book, How to Talk to Kids About Anything.
Yeah, you can put there's a little sticker on there that says national bestseller.
Oh, nice.
Now.
And for those who are watching on YouTube, you can appreciate that the book and Robyn's top match, which is outstanding.
I totally thought of that. And I did that completely on purpose. I only wear these colors now, orange and red. That's it.
You rep the brand. Robyn.
Yeah, it's perfect. That's like our friend Chelsea Gooden, who wrote Underestimated. And you would actually love her, Robyn, if you haven't met her yet. I want to connect you.
Let's do that.
And her book cover is like magenta and black, and all
fuchsia.
Fuchsia. And all of her book tour outfits
fuchsia.
were fuchsia and black.
Wow. That is
and
some commitment. Love
it was really, really
And her personality
is fuchsia.
Oh, wow.
Delightful.
All right. I definitely want to meet her. Yes. Delightful is totally my wheelhouse.
So before we dive into specific how to talk about this topic or that topic, I was hoping you could give our listeners some overarching principles for having complex, tricky conversations in general. What are your guiding lights as you think about entering into any of these many, many, many conversations?
There are many, but I would say one of them is one of the ones that you also talk about, that this is not one talk. It's not like we have like these big, the sex talk, the drug talk, when we check it off our list. We're like, oh, I already did that. Did you do the sex talk already? Did you have the talk? No, we have a series of little ones over a long period of time, and they start earlier than you think and end later than you would know. And it's all very, very good. And we need that, because even when, for instance, when people are like, oh, when did you tell your kids that you adopted them? When they were infants, not because I thought they'd understand, but because I was practicing. How can you get the words out in a way that makes you feel more and more comfortable, in a way that you go, oh, this is understandable now. And you're practicing for yourself. So start earlier than you would ever know. Also, talking to kids about anything means actually listening more than you talk. And that's sometimes surprising for people, that you need to be able to listen, and you listen on several levels. You listen to the words that your child is saying. But as we all know, especially those who have tweens and teens, words may be meaningless. How are you doing? I'm fine. I'm fine could mean I'm great. And it also can mean I'm absolutely terrible and everything's falling apart. So that means you also have to be listening to the energy, the tone, and what's going on around. And also your intuition, which we really need to listen to more, which is when, our child is talking and we go, oh, you feel it. You feel it in your throat. You feel it in your stomach, whatever it is, something's wrong. And be able to be direct and say, I feel like something is not being said here. Let's, dig deeper. So knowing that the listening aspect is part of what makes you somebody your kids want to talk to. And that brings me to the third thing, which is really being as askable as possible, knowing that you need to put on your big boy, big girl, big whatever pants and say, I am going to lean into this conversation. I'm going to have this conversation with you, even though it's uncomfortable, because I know that I'm doing a service. I am making sure that you feel comfortable, that you can ask me anything. And in order for you to be in that situation, that means I have to get comfortable. I have to be willing to ask anything, say anything, and listen to anything. And then make sure you do. If your kid comes to you and says something to you, you need to then remember what you said. You can come to me and talk to me about anything. That means when they say, I was at my friend's house and there was drinking, that you don't just fall to pieces, start screaming and telling them they're grounded for a month. Because this is when the showing up really means that you mean what you say and you say what you mean and you remain that askable person.
Okay, I want to rewind to point 2. So point 2 was about understanding, decoding what they're saying, and reading, not just listening to what they're saying, but reading the room and looking at their body language and listening to their tone. And, for those of us who have more than one kid in our life, we know that every one of them expresses these feelings and worries and joys differently. So let's go to the kid who is saying I'm fine, but is not fine and is having a bad day and is not sharing. And if you say what's wrong, you'll get nothing and they'll clam up. Okay. It's that kid. Now let's layer onto that our instinct as adults to bury them with flattery and tell them all the ways in which they're wonderful and special to us, because we think that's an effective strategy of either A, making them feel better, or B, making them open up to us, or C, both of the above. Help us through that. How do you have more effective conversations with kids who really don't want to let you in at the moment?
It's so interesting. I was speaking in front of an audience and I got a very similar question, about the kid who's not opening up. And I told the parent, even though your kid is not opening up, you need to be the one who opens up, who asks, and who is available. Just because they're not opening up and available and talking to you in that moment doesn't mean that they won't. And also, when you keep showing up and saying, I am here when you need to talk, they at some point will. If you stop asking, being available, and keeping yourself open, then they won't. So on your side, your behavior doesn't change. You still ask and observe, and you say, I'm noticing that your mood is low. I'm noticing that you haven't been sleeping. I'm noticing you haven't been eating. I feel like something's going on. And I want you to know I'm here. Then you may not be the right person for them to talk to. A harsh reality, but sometimes you're not. And if it's a problem that they think you would not understand, then that's going to be their thought process. So you can also make sure your child has safe people that they can talk to that you have already discussed in the past. And if you haven't, you can have this conversation today. But who do you feel like you can talk to and be open with? Is it Aunt Jen? Is it, this one's brother? Like, who can you talk to that you feel like you'd get like good advice from, that when you're not able to talk to me, you can go to this person? Yeah, of course I want you to talk to me, but I also want you to have definite options. Research tells us that young people do not feel like they have at least 3 people to turn to in a time of need and challenge. And we need to be one of the 3, but that's just it. One of the 3. There are other people who may be well suited for this particular situation. And finally, adding that when your child is in the throes of frustration, they may not want to talk. I don't always want to talk. I want to get in the shower. I'm just like, I don't want to be around anybody. So after time has passed, then that may be the time that you might say, hey, a couple of hours ago, you looked like you were feeling really low. You weren't eating, now you're sitting down, and I just want to open it up again and find out, like, is there anything that I can do to help you, process anything or feel better, or maybe like just distract you? You want to go get coffee? Do you want to go get an ice cream? So that you're providing what you would hope somebody would be providing for you in the same situation, knowing that you may be different from them, knowing that somebody may have different coping mechanisms. They may not want to talk because they may not be processors. They may want a distraction. They may want to go exercise because they are a physical processor. So offering different versions of that and saying, I'm open to helping you out with any of these, and taking myself out completely and bringing you over to a friend's house for you to process there.
Right. I mean, I think kids worry that they're going to hurt our feelings if
Yeah.
we're not the person they want to talk to or they feel comfortable opening up about. And, particularly we hear from parents of LGBTQ plus youth that if the parent themselves doesn't identify as LGBTQ plus, that the kids really are seeking other role models in their lives, other mentors, other people who they can talk to. But sometimes it's just like our kids find us annoying and we're setting them off and they just don't want to share with us. And it has nothing to do with identity or anything. They just like, we are closest to them and we are most annoying. And so helping them think about who are those trusted people and making sure that like their list is actually a list that you feel okay about, because like,
yeah,
Uncle Robbie may not be the person you actually want them to go to as their trusted adult in this circumstance.
Your face when you say Uncle Robbie.
Who is this guy?
We all have,
everyone's got an Uncle
we
Robbie.
all have that guy.
Don't go to him.
And And so I think like even if it does feel personal, right? Even if it does feel like this really hurts my feelings that my kid who used to open up to me, who used to snuggle with me, who used to tell me about every minutia in their day now is like a grunt and a like sorry or okay or I don't care and that's all you get. Like there is grief in that.
Yes.
But we have to not take it so personally because the goal is that they have lots of trusted people to go to.
Right.
I want to shift gears a little bit, although related, which is we've talked all the time on this podcast about the impact of hormonal mood swings on kids and the coursing hormones through their bodies, the laughter, the tears, the rage, the silence, all of it. And for some of us, the coursing hormones or decline in hormones in our own bodies and our own moods. And so we really encourage adults to help settle things and not exacerbate the mood, the explosiveness, whatever. I'm curious, Robyn, if you have strategies that are sort of unique to your style that you found work with helping kids calm down. We always joke, yes, you can tell kids to take a deep breath, but if you tell a 13-year-old to take a deep breath, they're literally going to shoot daggers into your heart. Like that's the last thing they want to hear. So what do you find? Because in order to talk about anything, actually everybody needs to calm down a little bit. What do you find is effective in getting people to kind of settle a little bit?
Yeah, it's a good question. And part of what I explore in that first chapter, which is all on how to talk to kids about big feelings. And we do want to start early if we can, where kids are able to really name their feelings and describe what's happening to them. I also like not in the moment, but in before, later, to be able to deconstruct what has happened, where did you feel it is a really important question. Like you erupted, but something happened before that. So where did that feeling originate? And what was going through your mind at that time before it kind of left you and came out your mouth, or you were crying or yelling? What happened right before? People often talk about the behavior when it you just exploded, and there's a lot that leads up to that, that mountain before. We call them triggers a lot of the time, but even before that kind of underlying. So figuring that out either in a pre-talk or post-talk way after, we know from just the brain science that anybody who has that kind of explosion, and then we're standing there, like we've seen at the grocery store, and we're trying to reason with the child on the floor tantruming, that does not work well, because
Robyn, I once left a child on the sidewalk of New York City. I was like 9 months pregnant and I had a tantruming child, and I was like, the only thing I can do right now is walk away. And then I had a man who was behind me on the street pick up my child and carry him towards me and say, I think you forgot something.
I don't think you can leave this here.
And you're like,
but
forgot is a relative term.
Yeah, exactly.
Forgot on purpose.
Forgot on purpose. That was my strategy, sir. But you're
everyone needs a strategy.
It was something we tried, and it didn't work. But you're standing over your child, in the grocery store, and you're saying like, this is not reasonable behavior. Like, this is not appropriate. And we need to use our words. And, even like that's a young child, or, as a teenager, where they're like screaming at you and they're like, you need to lower your voice. This is not how we talk to each other, is not going to work in that particular moment. And so just for like the science part, once we've flipped our lid and the amygdala is sort of taken over, that it's going to take like 18, 20 minutes for that stuff to recalibrate before we can actually have a conversation. So that we need to know. And then also what I was talking about before with that, just because taking a deep breath is helpful to you, or, going for a walk is helpful to you, that may not be helpful to your child. So exploring something before it happened or way after, and finding out what really works for you. Do you like options to be distracted? I know you're always really happy when you're watching, this particular show or this particular comedian, like that good belly laugh is really helpful for people who are in a pissed off mood to get that energy outward. And that's okay. It feels like you're cheating, like, oh, wait, you're not dealing with the problem, but you are. You're sort of postponing the problem a little bit so that you can get your brain online again. So, what's going to work? Pounding on a drum, playing with Play-Doh. Is it swaddling yourself with a blanket and having a cup of tea and a heating pad, a hot shower, just add water, that works for me because I'm like in the shower, nobody can come in because I'm buck naked and I'm like screaming in there myself and nobody wants to come in anyway. So that works for me to give myself the pause, because people are like, you need to like take a pause. How do we take a pause? Like we sometimes need to leave the room, strip ourselves down so that we will not go into the other room and start raging, and put ourselves somewhere that is, safe so that we can get that energy out. Other people, like I said, are processors. Some people like to sing, some people like to hum and get that vagus nerve going. There's a lot of different strategies that we can use to get to the same end, which is eventually being able to process those feelings. So don't be nervous about like trying things out. Some people really need like a thing to take with them. So we call it maybe a mad box when the kids are young, or I've called it a composure case, a calming case, where they have the things in there that are ready to go. The music that they like to listen to, young kids want the teddy bear, the blanket. You want to know where those things are so that when you are getting frustrated, you can go straight to them. That book you like, that podcast, that funny thing, that joke book, that whatever it is. And those things can be really helpful, but please explore them, not when you're in the moment,
right,
but when you're outside of the moment where you can be reasonable and have your frontal lobe on board.
What's so great about that advice is that when they're little, you can explore it with them. As they get older, they learn the strategy of finding their own thing. So, my daughter is someone who feels the catharsis of a cry. That helps her get through a sad moment. My son is different. So my daughter will go to the same chapter in the same John Green book, The Fault in Our Stars, and read the same chapter because it takes her mentally to where she needs to go. That was a strategy she came up with for herself when she was, 15, 16. And I mean, it wasn't a strategy I ever would have predicted. And yet it does exactly what you're describing. And I want to make sure that listeners know when you describe the science, which you do so beautifully, it does take a good 15, 20 minutes of settling down of the amygdala and the rest of the limbic system in order to have engage in conversation. But rest assured, in that window of time, things slowly de-escalate so that when you take nice, easy, deep breaths, that in 30 seconds can start to re-regulate. Now, again, that is a strategy that might work for you. And they may say a whole lot of nasty when you suggest take a breath. So, you're exactly right navigating the way through. Let's talk about emotional granularity a little bit. Why do we need to go there?
Well, being sad is not the same thing as being devastated. And your reaction is going to be very different. So when we're granular, we're actually picking apart the emotions and getting much more exact. When our child is like, that they're feeling sad, we are going to respond in a different way than, when a child is, I'm depressed. Like I can't even get off the couch. In the same way that when a child is miffed, that's different than being irate. And when you can name your emotion, you are able to process it better. And the people who you are trying to enlist and get on board to help you process that are going to be better at helping you. So it's not a small thing to be able to name these emotions and be able to get that off of your chest so that that yourself can help yourself, that other people can help yourself, and then you can be moving into a positive direction, maybe sitting with the emotion for a while, but then taking the steps towards feeling at ease again.
And to Robyn's earlier point, you're not looking at a screaming teen and saying to them,
Are you irate?
are you irate? Are
Or
are
are
you
you
devastated? Are you disgusted?
Let me
Right?
read
Like
you this list
you're
of things.
right.
And you
But
tell me how you're
let's
feeling.
talk in the moment about all of the very difficult feelings you're having. No, you're going to let them vomit it all out, and then you're going to give them time. You're going to breathe, right? As Carr mentioned, because we can do a little co-regulating. And then you're going to give them time. And as you said, Robyn, like a body scan, like where was it sitting in your body? What was happening before it happened? And they may say to you, I don't know. I don't remember. I have no idea what set it off. Any of those things, but helping them build the skill allows them the self-awareness and the management, which is critical. I want to flip this though, Robyn, to the question of when it's not just a momentary sadness, right? When it's not just like I'm rereading the chapter in the John Green novel because I had a bad day and I need a good cry so that I can turn to my homework and get my stuff done. It's like what you mentioned. I don't want to get up in the morning. I don't, how do we parse with our kids what is just normal adolescent emotional reality and what is more worrying that requires the help of a mental health professional?
Yeah, this is a pretty common question because when things flip to the clinical side, it's not something we can just do on our own. It's not, oh, I need to be a more skillful parent or I've gone wrong. Remember that there's a chemical component to this. There's heredity. There are different triggers that we are not even completely aware of at this point. And so we do need to tune in. What I like to tell parents is if it turns out that your child's behavior and how they are feeling is interrupting their normal ability to do the things that they like to do, love to do, need to do, that's when you are knowing that there's a problem. And it's over a period of time. It's not a flash in the pan one day. They didn't want to get up in the morning. They needed a mental health day. This is over a period of time. And they are having trouble getting in the car for school. They are not going to gymnastics class that they typically loved. Parents know their child best. Are they sleeping a lot more or less than they were doing? Are they eating a lot more or less? Have they changed friend groups suddenly? Are they hanging around with people you've never heard of or met all of a sudden? These are the clues that something is going wrong. Knowing that children between 7th grade and 12th grade are 99% of them are going to be changing their friend group completely. That's not what I'm talking about. This is more like sudden changes that when you look at all of these pieces together, you're going, something is off. And again, I would say, let's tune into your intuition because we often get that feeling in our bodies that says something's going on. So that would be a time when you do talk to your child and say, here's what I'm noticing. And
right, because so many of the things you listed there are part and parcel of puberty. And we talk about this a lot when we're on the road. Sleep patterns get disrupted. Melatonin is being released later into the night. Kids aren't tired, so they can't fall asleep. Then they're wanting to sleep longer, so they can't get up in the morning. They're in growth spurts, so they're eating you out of house and home. Like there's all this, right? There are all these confusing variables that look and sound a lot like depression. And what you're describing is tapping into something that we think of as innate intuition. It's not. Intuition is learned and honed. One of the things that we can do in guiding kids to become safe and healthy adults is to teach them how to learn the skill of intuition. So what does that mean? It means paying attention to that weird feeling in your stomach or in your heart or whatever that tactile feeling is for you that is signaling to you in a very loud way, something is not right here.
Right.
And so often we try to turn the volume down on that, right? Especially in the name of masculinity. Boys are taught to turn the volume down on that very quickly. But we need to honor our intuition, and we need to teach our kids to honor their intuition because of this, right? Because how do you split hairs around whether it's mental health or it's puberty? This intuition. Can you speak to how to help adults who have had their own mental health crisis? So whether they've been depressed, whether they've had body image issues, right? Whatever their path through mental health has been. Now you've got a parent who's carrying that baggage or an adult who is raising and caring for a kid. How do we guide those adults who their intuition is a little bit discolored? It's weighted down by their own lived experience.
Well, one of the things I would say is that we need to, if we're noticing something in our child, first we need to sit with like, how is it sitting with us? So I'm noticing that all these things are happening. My child doesn't seem to be able to get up in the morning, and now I'm creating a picture in my head. All of a sudden now I'm creating this picture of what's actually happening. I was bullied in 5th grade. When my child came to me and was telling me about some girl who was ostracizing her, the steam was coming out of my head, and I knew this. So first we stop and we realize I've got to talk to somebody about this. Somebody else, not my child.
Right.
And process this, because I need somebody else who is not me and hasn't had this situation happen, be able to help me frame, am I right in saying something here, or am I creating a picture out of something that's not? And then I often tell parents, like, if you're feeling worried or awkward, or say it outright, just say it. Hey, child, I don't know if this is anything at all, or this is my own baggage right here. But I just want you to know, I was noticing this and I just wanted to check in. How are you feeling? Do you feel different? What's going on with this friend over here? I haven't seen you talk, you haven't talked about her or him, so that you're now asking questions. One of the most important strategies that we can use is asking powerful questions. Those are punchy questions where you get out of your own way. They're short. What's going on? Tell me about this. Where's that? And instead of going on, you're asking, what do you think? And you're taking the information out from you, and you're asking your child so that they can deliver the information, and you move from lecturer to listener, and you just open your ears. You don't need to go down to, when I was younger, I was bullied, and this is what happened to me, and this is what I think is happening to you. No, you don't need to do that whole thing. You can be in the listening position, asking powerful questions. Who are you hanging out with at lunch? What'd you do during recess today? And really understand whether your child is now having a mental health crisis, or when they're home, they don't want to talk to you because you're annoying. And they've decided that sleeping and hanging out in their room is much more fun than going down to dinner and hanging out with you. You don't know this until you start asking questions and saying, is there anything that I need to be doing differently? Is there anything you'd like me to stop doing? Is there anything you would like me to start doing that would help you to feel more comfortable when you're home?
One of the places we hear that sort of feedback or criticism from kids to their adults, right? Like wishing their adults were doing something differently, is around the concept of body image, how they dress, how the parents or the grandparents or the family friends talk about their changing bodies, their clothing, their appearance, whatever it is. And I know, Robyn, this is a topic near and dear to your heart that you've written about and spoken about for many, many years. And it's a really, really common struggle that we hear from adults who have the best of intentions. But the stuff that comes out of our mouths is often the wrong thing. Even with the best of intentions, it's the wrong thing. So if it's something about, I know you also have an 8th grade son, like that hair on 8th grade boys these days is just like, it mystifies me. It's like the longer, the shaggier, the more in the face.
Ice cream scoop.
It's like, it's a whole thing. And everything from that to like girls feeling like they're being slut shamed and policed about how they dress and how they show their bodies, to the impact of social media on kids' body image, kids of all genders. So I'm wondering, as someone who's really expert in this area and as someone who's expert in talking about tough topics, what are your kind of guiding principles when you think about how adults should at least strive to be in conversation with kids about this?
So first, we have to get in touch with our own baggage with that, because most of us do have some baggage. And also understanding that there's research that reflects societal's opinions about a lot of things. For example, if you're talking about weight and size, we know from research, longitudinal, tons of studies, that the word fat is associated with so many bad words: ugly, lazy, blameworthy, disgusting, unpopular. Thin is associated with all these good things: popular, beautiful, all the things that which people would want to maybe aspire to. And then we realize that when it comes to weight, these words, fat, thin, are more like framings of character rather than descriptors of size or shape.
Mm-hmm.
So once we take in what's going on and all the opinions, more hair on this is good, less hair on that is good, this one's bad, this one, that there's a lot of societal things that are happening here. So let's get in touch with that and let's discuss it with our kids right now. What are the friends saying about this? What's the information out there? Did you see that movie? What did you think of that one scene where that kid was saying this and that? Like, do you agree with what they're saying here? What do people say about the hair? Like, get that conversation going. It doesn't have to be about you or that child, but you do need to get some information about their opinion. Do they care about it? Do their friends care about it? Sometimes otherizing it, taking it off that child and putting it on somebody else. What are your friends saying? What are the teachers saying? Is anybody being mean to other people because of this, that, and the other thing? Can be a great way of getting at it. And then knowing that if we're coming in with baggage, we may need to stop ourselves from this litany of information about what we think about it, and really, again, putting ourselves in that position of being a listener. When it comes to these appearances, sometimes we just need to shut up. And that's a harsh reality, because our baggage about about the hair on our face, or how somebody made fun of us because, we wore a specific type of shirt and they thought that we didn't look good in it, or we were too busty, or we weren't busty enough, that our child may not be carrying that baggage.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not our job to take our backpack of rocks and give it to our child so that they can hold it too. It is our job to educate our child and help them understand the media and, the societal pressures, and then say, a lot of this is a bunch of garbage. And I really wish I knew this when I was your age. What's your view on it? And let's get it on the table.
And, I've met so many parents in my life who, when things get real, when there's a very serious medical or mental health diagnosis, they look back and berate themselves for the dumping of the silliness and the worries around things that didn't turn out to be so concerning or so real. And I think it's very important to give ourselves grace as the adults and understand, but also give ourselves the opportunity to have a little bit of perspective in advance. So, if you already know that you're, being bullied for the t-shirt you wore in 5th grade was a big moment for you then, but is really, in the grand scheme of things, not the biggest thing. And it's the through line of the bullying that's the big thing, but not the details of it. to gain a little perspective there, to give yourself a little grace for having those big feelings, and then gain a little perspective and not bring it into the parenting, because then you can, when the big things come, and big things come for everyone, then you haven't blown your wad really on the small thing. I do want to land this conversation with the biggest thing, which is parents dealing with their own mortality, parents who are struggling with diagnoses that are life-threatening or life-ending, and how to talk to kids about that reality. And, can you walk us through some parameters around that, some advice you give, maybe not just for parents, but for anyone who loves a kid who is facing something that is chronic or terminal?
This is such a hard topic, and I'm so excited that you even bring it up, because most people completely skirt this topic, which is one of the reasons why it remains such a hard topic to talk about. One of the things that people often come to me about is telling me, I've got this diagnosis, or somebody we love has this diagnosis. I don't know how to tell my kid. I want to stave it off as long as possible, because it feels very unnatural to be talking to your children who are supposed to be living this joyful, youthful life about this ending piece. And it feels very heavy and ugly and unfair. And so we don't talk about it. But I would really caution against this. First of all, talking about anything is a connector, and we need that so badly. Also, because death is coming and because the diagnosis is there, we want the gift of time. And the only time we're going to get the gift of time is when we start talking about it. One of the things that I had talked about, a woman who had walked up to me at a party and said, I know, this is what you talk about. And we just got this diagnosis and want to stave it off for as long as possible. And I said, what would you hope that your children are able to do in this time with this loved one? Do you want them to not know, and then at the end feel like they're rushed to spend the time, but they weren't? They chose other things during that time because they thought they had more of it. This is the time when they get to spend the time, ask the questions, record the stories, make those potato latkes, like whatever it is that they love to do with that person. And that is the good stuff. I mean, it is the great stuff that we allow our kids the gift of time and perspective to process this information while that person is still here, while they can still talk to that person and tell them, this is how much you mean to me. Tell me that story that you told me about when you were in 5th grade. I want to record it. I want to remember it. I want to be able to play it for my children. It's a time that we can take the pictures and fill our cup with all the things that we love about that person. So I really tell people, make sure that you tell them what's going on, and don't lie about it. It's not a matter of, oh, she's got this little thing, but the doctors are working on it and you don't have to worry about it. It's, this is what's been going on. It's been going on for a little while. We thought that it was going to end in a different way. But as it turns out, the doctors have done everything they possibly can. And now they're just shifting to, make Nana, Dad, whoever, as comfortable as possible. And this is the time when we really need to lean in and be with him. We know you're going to have a lot of big feelings about this, and that is completely normal. I absolutely do. You may see me crying. You might be crying. You may be laughing. I want you to know what's going on, because you deserve to have the gift of time and be able to spend it in the way that you want to with this person.
I think that's a beautiful way to end. Robyn, thank you for taking on all these topics with such thoughtfulness and joy and warmth. And we obviously know who we're going to come to when we have these bumps in the road. Put you on speed dial.
Thank you. I'd love it.
And thank you for putting out. Can you just share with our listeners where they can find you out in the world to hear more?
Absolutely. You can go to drrobynsilverman.com. It's Robyn with a Y. And now I'm on Instagram under Dr. Robyn Silverman, because my other Instagram was being wacky. And I'm on social media everywhere. I'm trying to figure out TikTok, but X, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram is where I really hang out. And I hope I'll be going back and forth with you guys and talking all about this.
Thanks, Robyn. So great to have you.
Robyn.
You're welcome. And the book is everywhere. The books are sold, right? How to Talk to Kids About Anything. And come to my podcast because these fabulous ladies are going to be on it too. So I'm so excited.
Thanks, Robyn. We'll link to everything in the show notes so people can find you all over the place.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. You can email us with questions, feedback, or episode requests at podcast@lessawkward.com.
If you want to learn more about what we do to make this whole stage of life less awkward for everyone involved, our parent membership, our school health ed curriculum, our keynote talks, and more are all at lessawkward.com.
And if you want products that make puberty so much more comfortable, visit myumla.com.